Good day to you, friends. My name is Wei Sheng, and with my partner Andrew, we're going to share with you this presentation, No Stupid Questions, using students' questions to deepen learning in games. So just a background, Andrew and I are currently teaching in two different primary schools. But prior to this, I was actually working in this academy called the Physical Education and Sports Teacher Academy. And it's part of an outfit in the Ministry of Education that works with PE teachers in schools to do projects to explore and deepen our PE pedagogy. So this presentation stems from the findings from 2 years worth of work that Andrew and I did in his school. So essentially what we are doing is really to encourage our students to ask questions in a games-based approach. But before we start, let us just share with you what Andrew's students said at the end of the project. So this is just a short snippet of a focus group discussion that I had with them and to pick up their brains on this process.
Definitely, yes. Because there's a lot of thought process going behind us. Then we, once we go into the question, we analyze it deeper. That's how psychology works. So that we come up with new strategies and ways of trying to solve a problem. So I think it helps. What I will be asking is, am I shooting with the correct force? My first one. So I try to vary my force. If that one doesn't work, my second question will be, should I try to throw it at a different angle? How would my results change? So I'll try varying the angle. And I'll ask, how would the results differ if I threw with one hand instead of two hands? So that is how my thought process goes, and I'll try to ask questions and find strategies and answers to my problems.
When you're stuck and then you write questions, it makes you start to think. So you think like different ways, like for example, what if, why, how, yeah.
Definitely.
So from the students' response, we can see a certain level of thinking and metacognitive process of them thinking aloud and thinking of their thinking while they're playing the game. So these students' questions, or the fact of that we are using questions, is not entirely new in a games-based approach, because we always ask questions all the time. So when the teacher initiates a question after a game, the student will usually respond and the teacher will follow up with a demonstration or feedback. But what we are trying in a games questions-based approach is that we want students to be the initiator of the questions. So instead of the teacher asking these questions, we ask students, what questions do you have? And we give them the time and space to think and inquire. So an example would be the student asking, how can I move into space? Because the defender is following me very closely during the game. And we realized from our experience of teaching the unit using this approach is that it opens up a lot of possibilities. I can demonstrate a solution. I can throw this question to the class and pose it as the inquiry questions for the class and solve the problem together. I can ask the student another question for his question. So I question his question to lead him to a certain thought or perception that he can try, a solution that he can try. So these are just examples that we think we can do when students initiate the questions. But when we ask our students whether they like to ask questions in a PE lesson, and this is what we get. So the majority of them do agree that asking questions do help them learn in a PE lesson, but more than half of them said that they do not like to ask questions. And when we probe a bit deeper, this is what they say. And we can understand why. Because PE is a very performative sport. Sometimes we just need to do. We want to be in action. We want to maximize our activity time. So some students don't see the rationale or purpose of asking questions. Some students do not feel safe asking questions. And some students just want to be told what to do. And we totally understand that. But we went forth on this project fully believing that there is a place for us to give students the time to ask questions, because we want our students to be problem solver, to be at the center of the game. And as the game unfolds, I'm thinking on the move. I'm perceiving things that are happening. I'm adjusting and self-organizing to things that are happening. So we want our students to have this metacognitive behavior, and we believe that it will improve their skills and their performance in games. Even for beginners, we know that the cognitive understanding is key to them performing. So we want them to deepen their cognitive understanding of playing games and tactical understanding. When students articulate their action, we can also capture whether they learn or not. So for beginners or proficient players alike, we want them to be able to first think about what they are doing exactly, be able to articulate the problem and the solution that they have, and refine it further in their skills. But easier said than done. In fact, in literature, this is what they say about questions too, in a games-based approach. It is a key strategy, but unfortunately for it to be really impactful and useful, we want to give it time and space to be divergent, right? We want to give our students the time to inquire, to explore a solution that might not work. But this is the challenge, right? We do not have the luxury of time for this to happen. So it is challenging for teachers to adopt such an approach. And maybe we may think that eventually the teacher will still need to be leading the students with questions. But from our experience and our project, we find that actually there are ways to go about embedding and introducing a games-based approach with your classes. So I'm going to hand the time over to Andrew, and Andrew is going to share with you the process that he took with his students.
Thank you, Wei Sheng. Now let us share with you on how we embarked on this journey on question-based learning, and also address some of the concerns that you guys may already start having in your thought bubble. So first of all, I believe that this approach that we are sharing is not to replace whatever that we have been doing. I believe teaching through the game-based approach has been the way we go about doing things, and what we are proposing is to integrate question-based learning into the current approach that we are doing to supplement each other to bring about deeper learning through these two integration. And secondly, how we actually created that classroom culture, right? A safe environment where students are able to share and to express themselves without the fear of being radical. And also lastly, most of us will feel that we already felt the pinch that we do not have enough time or space during curriculum hours to cover the content that we are supposed to cover, and how we actually leveraged on technology to overcome these shortcomings. So these are three simple approach that we started to embark us on this journey. So in order for us to create that safe environment, the teacher started the lesson in a very generic way and opened questions to the entire class, so that whoever who feels that they are ready to answer certain questions, they can then answer them verbally. And this is also to set an example for others to respect these questions or those questions that the students ask in class. And through several lessons, that culture is then slowly built. All right, Rome is not built overnight, right? So this will take time, and it needs to be progressive. It's not something that it can just change overnight. So if certain behavior starts being exhibited in a negative manner, I think this is where teachers need to quickly step in to ensure that the environment is still safe for everybody to be participative. And slowly after, when you realize that students are starting to ask questions, we felt that the questions that were asked were not really so much aligned to the lesson that we are teaching. And hence, we introduced a second approach, which is to get students to ask questions from a problem-solving stance. So we get students to identify certain problems that they are facing in the game. And Thereafter, to categorize those problems into 4 main categories, namely skills, social, strategy, or rules. So for example, a certain student can come up to us and tell them that we want to stop playing the game. And then when we probe further, we will find out that, hey, actually, it's not that they do not want to play, but there's actually a particular reason. And it could be that they do not really know the rules. And then when they went against the rule, they felt that the game was unfair. And then that actually demoralized them from playing. Right? So this is just a simple example of how students can actually categorize their problems. And then from there, we will facilitate how they can actually resolve that problem by coming up with certain solutions on their own. And lastly, to help our students kickstart on this journey, we realize that it's not easy for students to ask questions. It's not something natural to them, because I think for the longest time, it has always been the other way around, where the teacher asks the questions and all the students need to do is answer. So then we introduce certain question starts to get students to frame their question and to get them to start asking questions readily. And over here, you can see just an example of a reflection done by a student. So we do have a physical journal for the students to reflect on the particular lesson at the end of each lesson. And you will notice that we encourage students to not just express themselves with words, but also with drawings. And over here, you can see an example of the teacher giving students feedback. And you can see that the teachers actually do not answer the student's question, but instead we come up with another question to get students to think deeper. And we also realize that by doing that, some of the students can actually come up with their own solutions rather than waiting for the teachers to provide them with a solution. And to just summarize how we actually do up the whole entire process, okay? So we got students to ask questions, and from those questions, teacher will comb through the questions, and then we'll converge all their questions into a particular learning objective for that lesson. And from the learning objective, the teacher will then decide what are the skills or the concepts that will be taught in the next lesson to answer the students' questions, and to design the lesson with meaningful practice tasks to get the students to practice the skills or the concepts is being taught. And thereafter, to apply whatever they have learned from the practice task back into the gameplay. And then that is where students will realize, oh, this is how we have done it previously, and this is what we are doing now. And they can see the difference between the before and the after. Over here, we can see an example of a student question. In this case, the student actually asked, when and where should we send the ball so that the defender cannot defend in time? So from this question itself, we can actually see how of the students think and what are they thinking. So we can see that this particular student, he or she is thinking from a perspective of an attacker, and he or she may be experiencing certain difficulties sending the ball to his teammate because the defender is always there to intercept the ball. Right? So that is the issue that the child is facing. So from there, the teacher will then design what are the skills or the concepts that we will teach in the next lesson to address the concerns that the students are facing. So in this particular example, we are actually teaching them this thing called the lead pass. Essentially is to send the ball to a particular place such that the player and the ball will be there at the same time at the same place. This will actually increase the chances of the receiver receiving the ball and to prevent the defender from catching the ball so easily. Now, next, the third concern I believe most of us will face is the affordability of time and space. Within that one particular hour that we have, we really feel that we do not even have enough time to conduct the full entire lesson. Then how can we actually carve out time from that precious 1 hour to get students to sit down together, to reflect on the lesson, and to pen down or write paragraphs like this. So hence we leverage on technology. And in this particular example, we are actually using Google Classroom as a platform for students to ask questions outside curriculum hours. So this is actually done after school, like a homework for them. And in the next slide, you will see this is actually another online platform from our ministry. And what we are trying to say is, in order to get our students to be reflective and to pose questions, right? We want the students to do that, but we are unable to do that in that 1 hour lesson. And hence, this is how we can actually resolve or mitigate some of those issues that we may be facing.
Thank you, Andrew. So Andrew shared with you the process in which he brought his students through. And I would want to share with you my observation of seeing how Andrew teach and the change and the transformation in the students. So because as the unit goal went along, we realized that actually there were lesser and lesser practice tasks or drills, but more and more time for games and more time for reflection and questioning. And what I saw was that the students focusing their attention to that desired functional outcome through their questions. So the students' attentional focus is always on the solution, the outcomes, rather than the movement form and the exact solution that the teacher dictated. And this is very awesome because we are seeing how our students are thinking, are perceiving, and are self-organizing game unfolds. And we can't say for sure that just simply by asking questions, their performance and skill level improved. But we definitely see an improvement in terms of the flow of the game, their engagement, and their courage to try and problem solve and not be afraid to take risks in the game. Examples of the students playing. Mind you, so these are 11-year-olds and they are not sports students, but you see that the level of enjoyment is really a lot. And even if they are taking risks and failing, you will see that they're still smiling and very motivated. And we think this is because they are very intentional in what they are trying to do. So when they take risks and the move didn't pay off, they are okay with it. In fact, they are reflecting and thinking and continue to try. So you will see that this was a failed attempt and there was a change in possession. And we can see the students trying to read the game, move into space, time the pass and the run, turnover, and immediately I try to continue the flow of the game. So we know for a fact that not only did this questioning process help the students in terms of skills, but also in terms of their engagement and their ownership in their learning. Of course, this problem-solving process can't be taught overnight, but we believe it can be taught and must be taught for our students to be an effective game player. And to do that, we need to be able to pitch it at the right developmental level. So the teacher will need to scaffold and break down this problem-solving and questioning tasks at a level that is suitable for them. And because using this generative approach to teach can be difficult to manage if we have all 30 or 40 different questions, what the teacher can do is really to, based on your understanding of the content and your experience, anticipate some key questions that will bring out certain learning outcomes and try to converge or frame the different questions posed by the students as one main inquiry questions to guide them in their learning. But we also continue to observe our students preferring to ask someone else questions rather than to reflect and think on the move and have this thinking process where they ask themselves questions. And we believe this is a work in progress. And to do that, we continually need to work on our routines and classroom culture because this is key to providing a safe space for students. Lastly, we are also currently exploring different mediums of questioning, whether it's using video recording or voice recording, because we know that not all students are able to be articulate in their writing. So we want to use their voice to ask questions so it's more easy and fast-free. And our lower skilled students can also benefit from this process. So with that, this is the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching through this presentation. If you'd like to touch base with us, these are our emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you.